2026 Early Connections Conference, Action, presented by the Van Sloun Foundation. The title of the keynote presentation is Braving Advocacy, Building a Path to Access, Belonging, and Opportunity.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that worked. Welcome to the 43rd Annual Early Connections Conference. I'm Amy Ferreira, Director of Admissions and Enrollment here at Perkins School for the Blind. We've been waiting for you. Whether you're here on campus or attending virtually, we are thrilled to have you. Thank you for showing up today for children with disabilities. I believe connections are one of the most valuable assets that we have. In a world obsessed with individual achievement, the real power lies with how we link together. Consider yourself linked. Let's get started. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce the leader of this conference, Rachel Bennett.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Amy, for that warm welcome, as always. And thank you all for being here. This is my third Early Connections Conference, and it still just tickles me and makes me so excited to see so many people here. I'm just so grateful. Our keynote speaker is about to take the stage, but before she does, I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize everyone who has made today possible. An event like this takes a lot of people and a lot of hands pitching in, saying yes to things, staying up late, but all with a smile. And that's what Perkins is, to be honest. So this event is really an embodiment of so much of what we do here. And it's such a special day. So I'm so glad you could be a part of it. I'd like to express our deepest gratitude to our presenting sponsor, the Van Sloun Foundation, and specifically Joe, Neil, and Sue Van Sloun. Your belief in our mission has turned a partnership into a true friendship. We also want to thank our core sponsors, 100 Women Who Care Boston, Eastern Bank, VHB, the Delta Gamma Foundation, and Boston Children's Hospital. To our community partners, exhibitors, and giveaway donors, many of whom traveled across the country to be here, thank you for powering this day. I hope you all got to visit with them, and there will be more time at lunch too to visit. To the Perkins team, especially the admissions department, which is my department, your creativity and dedication blow me away every year. This event reflects all of the hard work you put into it, and I hope you feel that and are proud, because I am. Really, I'm so lucky to be on this team. Everything is a yes. Sometimes I start to ask for help and they're already on it. It's just, I'm very, very grateful for you. So thank you. And Amy Ferreira, thank you for all that you've given to this community and to me as well. This conference is just a small part of what you do for everyone here, which is hard to believe, but it's true. I'm so grateful to know you and learn from you. I also want to thank Chief Operations Officer and President of Educational Programs Ed Basso and our President and CEO David Barth for their steady leadership, encouragement, and enthusiasm for this conference. And to our session speakers, thank you for the expertise you are about to share. And finally, to the parents and caregivers, this day is for you. Your commitment to showing up is why you are here. And I admire just every action that you take for your children, for your students. This is a small part of it, but it's also a big part of it. And showing up is so important, and we see it and we appreciate it, and we're here to help you keep showing up. It is now my distinct honor to introduce a woman who embodies the spirit of dedication. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, parent, licensed educational psychologist, and activist, Darlene Norman. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. It's so lovely to be here at the 43rd Annual Perkins Early Connections Conference. Thank you so much to the Perkins team for the warm welcome and preparation for today and yesterday as well. So my name is Darlene Norman. I am a woman with long, dark, wavy hair. I often wear glasses. However, today I'm wearing contacts that fully correct my sight. I'm also a hearing individual. My favorite title is being a parent, and that's what primarily brings me here. My husband, Jared, and I are proud parents of a now 13-year-old daughter named Jet. This is her name sign. And she is deafblind due to the effects of her medical diagnosis, Charge syndrome. I feel very fortunate to also be in the career of special education and also in the developmental disability support services. My daughter was not the first deafblind individuals that I had met, nor was she my first introduction to Charge syndrome. My educational and professional background had led me to earning a master's degree in school psychology. So when I began as a school psychologist, I met my first deafblind student and Charge syndrome. And that has instrumental to my talk today and helping myself and my family to be strong advocates for our daughter, as well as other individuals who are deafblind. I have also served in public education as an administrator for both special education and student services, which also has been really instrumental to me in my advocacy journey and what I'll be sharing today. I have also worked in the private sector as a licensed educational psychologist and an independent facilitator. A lot of these journeys that I'm going to be expressing have really helped to support both my knowledge as a parent and to help with my learning for how I also serve as a parent liaison in our deafblind community. I also feel very fortunate to be connected to the low vision and deafblind population through a few different channels. The first is the Charge Syndrome Foundation. That network and organization has been a powerful tool, support system in meeting other families, other individuals with Charge syndrome. Related to that, I'm also connected to the California State Deafblind Project, serving as a parent liaison. And we are an affiliate of the National Family Association for Deafblind. So in my journey over the last 13 years as a parent, these organizations and much like Perkins and other fantastic organizations that are here today, each of these places really serve my journey in learning, our journey in learning as professionals, as well as parents. And without this network, we wouldn't be where we are today. So let's talk about advocacy. So advocacy really matters for our journey together. As parents and educators, we have so much that we learn from each experience that we have with our children, our students as they become adults, and as professionals. I remember being an early educator and how I didn't feel like I was extremely knowledgeable about too many things. But over the course of the time, working with families, experiences a variety of disabilities, and then getting to be able to focus on low vision, sensory loss specifically, including hearing loss, it's been an incredible journey. And the advocacy piece to being involved in a community is important for looking at how do service delivery look like? What does it look like for services in the birth to 3 realm, moving into preschool, school age, and into adulthood? And each of these aspects really matter, and they do change over time. Your expectations as a parent, as a professional, again, these are going to evolve as the individual ages. Opportunities, long-term independence is always our goal. How do we support our children, our students with independence? And advocacy isn't always about confrontation. It's how do we help our children's future, and we're helping to participate in that whole process. And we work together. Now, advocacy can be confrontational at some points, but to be honest and personally, it has served in a manner to help me feel more comfortable and have power in situations where I felt like I didn't. And so in that power and advocacy, it actually comes together and how we serve everybody. We're all part of that journey. It's not just about the parent or the child. It is about us as professionals as well. So as part of the journey, we really do want to focus on access, belonging, and opportunity. And with each of these components, we are looking at the individual themselves and how do they participate. Communication, it's such a strong strong tool that the individual develops. Language deprivation is extremely difficult, and being able to give the child language in their primary language, which at the birth to 3 realm is going to be in gestures, body language, noises that develop into voice. And that voice might develop into their own language skills that can be a part of voicing from spoken English or other native languages like Spanish, Mandarin, whatever is part of that family culture. Language can also develop into sign language. There's such an important aspect to serving those with dual sensory loss and deafblind and helping to meet what their communication needs are. And language deprivation is one of the most important parts to building those early connections and how we serve students. So helping families, parents understand the importance of building those communication skills and really understanding those nuances is going to lead to stronger advocacy skills, self-determination skills for that individual, as well as the family themselves. It's an evolution on my journey of being immersed into not only deaf culture, but the low vision community, and then also specifically deaf-blind culture. There's a lot of things to navigate and to learn. And as a hearing parent, being able to learn American Sign Language is also part of that journey. Much to do, much to learn. Belonging, inclusion, and relationships and participation. There is much challenge that can come with in the dual sensory loss of how do we fit? How does our child fit into our different communities? It might be in the school setting, it might be in the community setting, different activities, our family. Those aspects have had its challenges over the course of the years. And those relationships matter. If other individuals are not able to communicate with our children, then they're not going to be able to build those strong relationships. So we want to include and help other people participate in our children's journey. Opportunity. That independence factor is important, and it looks different at different stages and also for different individuals. Self-determination is an ever-growing need and how we help individuals with being able to participate and help make decisions for themselves. And our communications with our children and how we help them grow is such an important factor for their learning and into adulthood. So let me tell you a bit about Jet and our journey. So this is a adorable picture of Jet. This is with one of her early interventionists, who was a speech and language pathologist and a teacher of the deaf. And what is so marvelous about early intervention is that home and parent aspect and coming into the primary learning environment that's consistent. And so what our experience as parents is that we don't know a lot. And although I work in the profession, it's one thing to work with a variety of students who I can learn from, but that minute by minute, the day-to-day, the day, the night, the weekday, the weekends, these are all part of understanding the journey and how early intervention matters and what we learn from those professionals and how we navigate just regular life. And so as families, we often have to learn very complex systems, both in the educational system. We had our own experiences growing up, which will look different for our children when they have sensory loss. And we also have to learn, how do we advocate for services? What services exist? Many times we may not know what the services are, and we have to rely upon our professional teams to help us. We also have to understand and learn the medical system, which, that's not my realm, but I've had to learn many, many different specialties and how that works for the connection with services to the education side. And so the other part that we often have to also advocate for is how does sensory access work with each individual, because we can learn about it as a concept, but the actual fruition of what sensory loss looks like for an individual is going to be different. So she's deafblind, and she has profound vision loss and hearing loss in her left side. And on her right side is where she has more of her access. And so explaining that to people and us and how we present and teach her different things really matters. And so we also were not sure what communication systems were going to look like for her. And so being able to give her access was extremely important. So those first advocacy challenges, we're looking at common barriers. Oftentimes it's related to limited awareness for ourselves and also for the professionals. If this is their first experience working with a child who has low vision and in our case, hearing loss, we are, as parents, are often the ones teaching the professionals what to do or what to learn about. And so there are so many resources that we've been able to come across in our journey. And what had really helped is in our birth to 3 experience, we had a teacher of the visually impaired who connected us to the California Deafblind State Project. And that has been extremely instrumental. And you'll get to see those individuals shortly in our presentation. They had they did home visits. They've done technical assistance in the birth to 3 support systems, in the preschool setting, and into school age for our daughter. And we stay extremely connected. And what is difficult, though, is that when you have fragmented systems, because there's so many different components that really do have to work together, it can be a lot for a parent. And so we have here, this is her next teacher of the deaf, Deb, who actually deserves a tremendous amount of just empowerment for our family. Without her, our daughter would not be the individual that she is today, and give her access to a deaf program where we then incorporate all of the low vision support needs that she has. And one of the things that was instrumental to that is that it brought community. Being a deafblind student, it means that you're entering into settings where it's not always inclusive. And so what really mattered to me as a parent is that Jet would have a community that she can immerse with, where there was one component where we didn't have to explain the hearing loss aspect. And it also is a bridge to communication, having instruction in ASL, having deaf mentors, both as educators and children, students, paraeducators, an intervener, and it's just powerful. So over here, the Deb, our teacher of the deaf, deserves such much kudos, because in her kindergarten year, Jet was in a program that did not necessarily meet her needs, but we did agree to, as a family, to approve and having access to both general education and into a moderate to severe program where there were students with nonverbal needs. At the time, Jet did not have strong communication skills and spoken English, but again, she has hearing loss. So Deb would go into her classroom and teach her for 4 days a week, 45 minutes a day. And she would teach her not only how to read, and do sign language. Jet also had communication systems, including an AAC device, the LAMP system, which was also very helpful. It gave her a voice when she didn't have one. Many people didn't know sign language in those early childhood programs that she had. And so it was a way for her to have a voice and to build confidence. It also showed people that, having low expectations and placing her in a program that did not necessarily meet her needs, I think Deb, she really showed people that Jet was ready. It also showed the deaf program that she was able to get access to, that she was ready, because at 3 years old, they initially told us she's not ready. She didn't have the sign language capacity to be successful, which again, as hearing parents, we have so much to learn in the sign language realm that it's challenging for us. And so Deb deserves, again, so much credit. And because without that communication systems, really access was limited and learning was restricted. And even moving into a general education setting, there wasn't a belief that Jet could do well, that unfortunately, her general education teacher did not welcome her in a way that was warm. And as a parent, it was not warm and welcoming, even though that's what the traditional kindergarten experience is supposed to be. It's supposed to be about inclusion and support, having fun, and learning lots of different skills. So with that, her independence also was delayed in being able to have integration because it wasn't facilitated very well. However, we're able to move on into different systems, and with that, she has had an amazing team with the California Deafblind Services. We like to tell our story by giving empowerment to the individuals who have brought us to where we are today. And David Brown and Julie Meyer are two of those journeys. Two of those individuals have been with us on our journey throughout Jet's life and her educational career. And we like to make a tradition. Every time that we come together at the Charge Syndrome Foundation Conference, we need to take a group picture so that way we can continue our story in that journey. So really, the advocacy happens best when we're working together. So both with families, this includes extended families, grandparents, cousins, aunties, and also the education team. We have such large educational teams when sensory loss is part of our disability journey. And many people are sitting around the table, and it can be very challenging to build those communications and the time allotted because of how many intricacies we have with working together. And there's so much collaboration. And one of the things that I appreciate is just that co-facilitation, the co-treatment, that speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, special education teachers, interveners for the deaf-blind, et cetera, will all work together to help make that magic happen. And without it, it can be challenging. But specialists also continue into the community setting. So when we go to our medical professions, see all the specialists, we bring another provider, a caregiver, a community intervener who can help provide and give access to what that experience is like, help provide access to ASL. And also in the community, there is an amazing aspect to what community can bring for both in the local community activities, but also in the broader community. For the low vision and for hearing loss, there is such a network of community resources that extend beyond local that we need to access, because the world of sensory loss can be very tiny when you're just thinking about the local setting. So we need to make sure that we're providing access at the state and national level, and we will talk a bit more about that. So this here is Jet with her current intervener in the school setting. And what I do appreciate is the connected community that her teacher of the deaf and her intervener provide. We have strong communication systems that we've built both in we have spreadsheets in Google Docs that we write notes to. We do also have communications through texting that her teacher and I have that allow us to be able, because her teacher is deaf, and that we will be able to communicate with. And what they do a great job is they take pictures and they document those experiences, because what's important about the individual student is that they can reflect back and see their journey. And so being able to see her in different learning environments and having fun, her intervener, Rain, is fantastic. He is very willing to participate and wear similar costumes. It happens to be Monster High. If you're not familiar, it's her current obsession. And she also loves K-pop and anime, all the things. So throughout, they have a strong connection, and they also provide lots of resources for her and making sure she has materials that she needs. So belonging is about inclusion, but it also means more. It's about feeling that connectedness and that she's not alone, that there are people who care about her and provide her with that feeling of being included. So raising expectations. So we are fortunate to have met Haben Gurma, who's a famous deafblind individual. She's actually in the Bay Area near where we live. And so she came to Santa Cruz, and there was an inclusive playground that was having a grand opening, and she was the guest speaker. So part of our journey is also ensuring that Jet gets to meet other individuals who she can look up to, who are her heroes, people who have forged the path before her that can give her a way to see what's possible. And so again, we like to take pictures to help show her where she was and where she might be in the future, and also showing her what different individuals have access to. Haben has a brailleist who's with her. She also has a guide dog. And so being able to see what that looks like for different individuals helps us understand and think about what's really possible, and what you're able to achieve with the right supports. And Haben was able to achieve her Juris Doctorate degree from Harvard. And so that is essentially having high expectations and lifting barriers that would typically be impossible without resources. So with our advocacy tools, this is Jet's actually her first intervener, Katie. And so this was her day of her kindergarten graduation. So that kindergarten year was extremely difficult, but what we did look forward to was what the following year was going to be. And Katie happened to follow her into that journey into first grade, which also turned out to be another year where it was quite difficult, actually. With Charge syndrome and her sensory loss and her medical experiences as an early child in birth, it was difficult for her when it came to sensory experiences and behavior. And so Katie provided many ways to help support her with those difficulties. However, in first grade, it was challenging. You know, it led to a situation where sitting around where many administrators, many people who are deaf, interpreters who are participating in the meeting, her extensive service providing team, which she had everything. We didn't have any difficulties with making sure that she had all the support services in place. It was that part was easy, but it was the setting, the community where she belonged and where she needed to have access to that was important. And that deaf community was not necessarily warm and welcoming in the beginning. Jet had to prove that she could be there. And unfortunately, that first year experience led to where she was told she didn't belong. And so advocacy sometimes is conflict and where we have to ensure that she continues to have access. And so we did continue to fight and advocate for her ability to stay in the program. And she did return. She was out for just a short period of time. But you know what? As painful as that experience was, it was an important journey and actually meant that she could prove that she belonged in a setting where people didn't think she did. And it actually led to her having a service team that she continues with today. And much kudos to Auntie Corinne being part of that journey and help teach her not only social emotional skills, but also executive functioning skills, reading, writing, and being that extensive support. I have to say, as a public educator and as a parent, I can recognize that school systems can't do everything. And we have to make sure that we're involved in the extensive network so that way it extends beyond the school day. And so there's only so many minutes, so many hours in a school day, 180 days in a school year, a few more with extended school year options. But beyond that, there's so many minutes, so many seconds that matter, and where we have to continue that learning and education and continue that journey. So this is another intervener that Jet has. It's currently her community intervener that we use with the Developmental Disability Support Services. Jet and Kaylin are at the statue of Helen Keller at the U.S. Capitol. And so what we do is for the past 3 years, through the National Family Association for Deafblind, we go advocate on the Day of the Hill. And what has empowered us to do so is these connections to these organizations when we were ready, right? In the early years, it's really overwhelming as a parent to learn to navigate and try to manage not only educational needs, but we had a lot of health needs that we had to learn and support on a daily basis. And so when we were ready, we were able to make that next step and start that advocacy at the national level. And so being able to support the teaching and learning for policymakers who make decisions that connect down to the educational systems and the developmental disability support services is extremely important. And so we are looking at what are student strengths? How do we make sure that we provide what the student needs to access their learning? And so we're always asking questions of ourselves, of each other. What do we not know or anticipate? Because again, we don't know everything as a parent, and we have to extend, those questions and expertise to our team. So our second tool is to, keep building up those partnerships. What are the goals that we want for our children? And what's beautiful is that when we listen to what each person brings to the table is that their goals for our daughter, they match ours, but sometimes they even extend beyond what we might dream of. And so that's something that we can appreciate. And then sometimes there are times where we have to bring and elevate those goals themselves. And that's okay, because we're all equal partners at the table and we all have a voice and we each need to be heard because we learn from each other. So we'll always use questions to help us with that journey, and we'll never stop asking them. They won't stop into adulthood as well. So as we continue with our journey, we will also continue to take those photos and stories. Using a personal passport is something that I'm very passionate about. It's a concept that we, as parents, can use to help tell our child's stories throughout their lifespan and with different providers, whether it's her educational team, with her community team, her medical team where necessary, but also extended family. Family is extremely important in this journey. We cannot do it alone as parents or as our close network of family systems. We need to rely upon our extended family to be a part of that journey, and they're also learning as we go. And they're going to be advocates for our children when they're involved, and they learn from us by seeing and doing as well. We will always continue to follow up after each meeting, whether it's informal or formal. Many meetings happen in the IEP systems, but also the developmental disability systems. And how do we keep ourselves organized? There's so much to know and do, and there's going to be many systems that parents will have and that will evolve over time. Many times it's also in our head. Sometimes it's just hard to keep everything written down. But when we have these lived experiences, they help us to really advocate strongly. So understanding systems, again, there's always a theme. We're always going to be curious and asking questions, documenting things. If something isn't written down on paper, we'll make sure to follow up. Let's add that to an email. Let's add that to the document. Never stop asking. Never stop adding to what tells the child's story. And also, just if you're unfamiliar with processes, ask those questions. Ask other people to please teach me what I don't know. I'm ready for that information now. And even if I'm not ready today, please feel free to tell me what I need to know. Give me resources, whether it's websites, connections, a pamphlet. We'll take those resources with us, and when we are ready, we'll be able to research and explore. So talking about curiosity and courage, it is always making sure we stay focused on the individual at the center of it all. And oftentimes bringing that picture of that child to the meeting, because if they're not involved in those early years, that's okay. That's us. We're being that voice, but we can bring a picture to help keep the child at the center. And when the child is ready, bringing that child and involving them in that process is going to be an important part for their own advocacy, because we're essentially modeling what they get to do as they grow older. And professionals, we really are the change makers to helping create the systems. We also create the barriers. And so we as professionals have to make sure that we are involved in making the system more accessible for our children and our parents. and that we learn from each other. We need to listen deeply, ask questions, be curious. I mentioned earlier parents asking professionals, but professionals can also ask parents, teach us, what do we not know? What can we learn from you? So that way we're on this journey together, and that we believe together in what potential occurs and what will matter in the future. We also need to think about accessible environments. And so those are always part of that transition process and thinking about that next step, making that journey possible and keeping many things in mind when it comes to mobility, low vision, hearing access, having all those tools. And I have to say, Jet is an expert self-advocate. She just started martial arts. So she will walk into that environment. She has her FM system. She handed it to her master, and he has a loud booming voice. He goes, I'm not sure I need this, but she goes, here you go. This is what you need in order for me to have access. And sure enough, at the end of that session, she goes, you know what? I don't need it with him. And it was great because, and he's honestly one of the most remarkable teachers that she has in her next journey. And so, but you know what, when she's in an individual learning environment right now, but when it becomes group, she might need it because there are other children and adults that will be in that environment that will change her access. So she might decide to bring that FM back, and hey, that's fine, that's great, because then other people can use it too. It's not only her. Sometimes other people lead sessions, and so they might not have the same voice and volume that he has. All right. And so here is our representative, our U.S. representative, and Jet. We had the opportunity to advocate with Rare Disease Day. And so we are, again, teaching Jet that inclusive aspect, what's possible, and bringing the individual to these advocacy opportunities is most important. When they see the individual, the lawmakers, our policy changers, that matters. And so it helps to tell the story. And for Jet, it means that she's learning that independence factor. She hears me be able to tell her story, and but at some point, I'm going to pass that baton to her, and her voice, her ability to be communicative, also learn how to be succinct because she can be a little distracted. She likes to be off topic sometimes. But we're helping her to see what's possible, what choice, what leadership, that self-determination will she want for herself, and in how she's going to include herself in those opportunities. And this here is an important group photo. This was last year where we came together as the National Family Association with Representative McGarvey, who is one of the Deafblind Caucus co-chairs. And we had the inaugural Deafblind Caucus meeting in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago. Jet was the representative deafblind individual. And so that was an important factor. And although I wasn't able to add that to the photo here, it was a powerful moment for her to see what's possible, and having that room full of representatives, staffers, and interns to learn about deafblindness, to wear those low vision goggles for simulation. It gave them a powerful experience, and walking in to say thank you. Thank you for co-sponsoring the Deafblind Data Act. We need more representatives to be aware that the deafblind population is not represented in the census. And so we do have a census for deaf low vision and for deaf hard of hearing and low vision, but not necessarily the deafblind as a community. And so that advocacy matters, and how she participates and how we participate as parents matters. So the second goal of advocacy is to help ensure that the child, has access, what their environments look like. And so although it can change over the course of time, we have to think about that preparedness. So as a parent, I'm always thinking about travel. What does travel look like? We've found, what airports work best for her, what ones are easy to walk through, the security system. How does she learn how to navigate that new environment? And so she has become a champ when it comes to, walking through an airport, helping prepare her for what security looks like. She happens to have a G-tube. She has pureed foods. So every time we go through security, it takes more time. And having patience, which can be hard for somebody who wants to get to their destination, is a journey in itself. But with each practice that she has when she walks through an airport, we prepare her. And so we're teaching her how do you navigate checking in your bags? So we're teaching her how to use her iPhone that she uses for access, the low vision magnification system within it. She uses it for live captions when she's talking with individuals. That's her FM system. Teaching her how to use the wallet system to bring up the boarding pass, scan in, check in for that pre-boarding process, and helping her ensure that she checks in with the lovely and helpful flight attendants. They come to see her because we make that notification in when we purchase that ticket. But we're helping to use a task analysis, essentially, backwards mapping what her experience is like, so that way she knows what it is in order to, be independent. At some point, we hope that she'll be interested in a career or continuing her education, and it may not be close to where we live. She might be traveling across the country, and at some point, she's not going to want mom and dad to be with her. And so helping bridge those baby steps to get to that a new adventure and what adulthood looks like is going to be really important. So, really, her community is going to continue to expand. And so it's changing. Her deafblind intervener has changed over the course of her educational career. We're at the point where our lovely Kaylin, her community intervener, is headed off to college. She's going to Gallaudet. And although we plan to visit her, that means that we're going to lose that access in the community. We don't have a replacement for her. And so we're going to be looking for what's the next step? Who might be that next community intervener to help provide appropriate supports and services that we are provided with our state developmental disability services. So, and we also have been very fortunate. Her team, her Kaylin specifically, is a really strong advocate for her and helping ensure that her rights are protected in the community. If I'm not there to, help make sure that she has what she needs, Kaylin's there with her, taking her to various places and make sure that she has access to ASL, or making sure she uses her technology for that, for those needs. And again, we're really working to teach our children how to advocate for themselves. It's going to look very different for each individual student, and depending where they are at in their journey. And so whatever that communication tool may look like, if they're using an AAC device, if they're using picture exchange systems, if they're using tactile communication resources, these are all going to be part of that way that they advocate and learn how to build their system of supports. And we enjoy going to Disneyland. It actually became a lot easier to plan an annual trip to Disneyland for her birthday than plan a birthday party. It's less stressful and way more fun. And so Kaylin and Jet are really trying strongly to pull that sword out, but we've never been successful. But building those memories has really been important. And so I list here that it takes a village. Again, we're not doing this alone. We learn from each other. That team of educators from birth to 22 is going to be an important aspect for us. The therapists, medical therapists, community therapists, educational therapists, our family systems. I learned so much from my parent friends, my parent community. I really look to those who have adult children and what their experiences are, so that way I know and how I can plan for the next steps. Community organizations, understanding that there's a Helen Keller Center out there, and that we can, use transition services and have experiences. Perkins School for the Blind, the California School for the Blind, the Texas School for the Blind, the Texas School for the Deaf. These are all organizations that I have built connections with, have personally gone to and experienced, and we also make it very intentional to take Jet to these communities as well. She can see that there's these resources out there that are designed to help her and that she can learn from, and that her world and connections aren't small. They actually are vast. And again, I mentioned policymakers, because without laws, our children would not have access to what they have. The American Disabilities Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which continues to evolve those resources, State Deafblind Project, Title IV Part D, deafblind services, the National Center for Deafblindness, all these matter when it comes to funding and education. And again, what continues to build advocacy? It's nothing new. It's just a repetition of what I've shared before. And so I just want to make note that it really isn't about winning argument every single time. Trust me. We have lost many battles over our journey, but those hardships have taught me how to advocate better. We sat at the first IEP meeting in our local school district. It was a district that my husband is a teacher at. And so, and our one of our best friends who married us was the principal. He's still the principal, actually. And so sitting at the table where your friends are the decision makers can be both a blessing and hard, right? Because you're asking for resources that cost a lot of money. Educating a deafblind child is not cheap. And so at that time, there was not an intervener at the table. And you know what? I knew that. I knew that an intervener would not just be down the street. It would take time. But they listened. It also helped that I was a special education director at the time. So I'm not going to lie, that was very helpful to be able to have a professional, strong voice and sitting at the table. But I also know from my experiences as an administrator that we may not have the resources at that second, but it is always my job to ensure that we're working to find those resources and prepare. When we have young children and they're growing up, we need to be prepared for what those resources look like. We need to learn what it's like to educate students with low incidence disabilities, multiple complex needs, and preparing for what those environments look like. Think long term. It's not just about the today, it's planning for the next few years, it's planning for the longevity. So I just want to say thank you so much to Perkins and the team here for all of you being here today in person, and also those out in our virtual community who are here to participate today. And so I just think it's really important that we know and have experiences from those who come before us. So these are a couple of my favorite quotes. So Maya Angelou shared that I learned a long time ago that the wisest thing I can do is be on my own side, be an advocate for myself and others like me. But I want to extend that. We're not always with others who are like us. We need to be making sure that others who don't know our differences also are aware. And those differences can extend to, other disabilities, reading disorders, dyslexia, ADHD, autism. There's so many conditions out there, and the disability community is vast. And for each experience that one person has, it's there to inform and to ensure that we are helping others that may not have the same needs, but we can teach each other. And Helen Keller, she said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So thank you all for being here today and helping teach me, because I'm excited to learn from everybody here today as well. All right, and we do have some time for a Q&A, so we'll take any questions that you might have for me. And I forget who has the microphone. Okay. I see a question in the back.
Hi, I recall you talking about the deaf culture and your daughter wasn't accepted in there initially or something. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that experience because I have some deaf friends and I was just curious what that was like.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And I would say that's probably the hardest experience we had. We actually had to file for due process because and get an attorney. And I felt that coming on, to be honest. And it was with the referral. I knew with the referral, and in the planning in those early days, the school psychologist who I had worked with previously and the school nurse, they just asked certain questions that were difficult. And I could tell that the behavior side was hard. I think that's the part that was the tricky part. It was the behavior, to be honest. The teachers of the deaf that she had in first grade, she had 3. And this was also the year that COVID hit. So before, so the first 2 teachers, they were both hearing individuals. And so when Jet had difficulties, her intervener would take her out, and those difficulties were loud. And so they were disruptive to the learning environment. But also it was not taking into consideration what her sensory needs were to help prevent that antecedent. What was the cause to that behavior? And so she had many times where she was loud and disruptive and crying. And so they used that experience to take her out of the program. She was there for 2 months, and then she was gone for a week. She was home, and then from there she returned. She went to another teacher that lasted 3 weeks. That teacher was did not have a desire to educate her. However, the beautiful part is her third teacher, Michelle Maloney. She's a deaf individual. She she lost her hearing over time, so she used both spoken English and sign language, and that was the aspect that was she was deaf. So when Jet would have her loud behaviors, Michelle would say, "Jet, I can't hear you. Your loudness does not bother me." And so Jet was like literally. And so at the time we were doing a functional behavior assessment, Jet had a behavior support plan that had previously been in place because these behaviors were not new. And they still have some elements of continuing today, but man, are they much better. When you take into consideration, you prepare for those sensory and behavior needs, they change. And so Jet's behavior got better. They lessened over time, and then COVID hit, and then we went virtual. But those behaviors still continued in virtual. And so when Jet did return in person a couple of years later, they continued, so they still mattered. It was a different environment, a different teacher. But that aspect of, people in the elementary age, in the total communication program, it still continued to be difficult. The teacher, the deaf, that she had for third, fourth grade did not believe in her skill sets. So then we advocated for what? We want mainstream inclusion. They had a mainstream aspect to the deaf program, and she had an intervener, so it was easy to just plan for. And so they said yes. Was she academically ready? Oh, no, no, no. But she had an amazing general education teacher, Todd Sinclair, who deserves a ton of credit. Kaylin was her intervener at the time, and the two of them, with her teacher of the deaf, Leslie Banks, they deserve a lot of credit. And it was just for that 1 year. We felt strongly about deaf education, and she's now in middle school in 7th grade, and her teachers of the deaf are incredible. And so I definitely, that inclusion, that belonging really is much more in effect in middle school. And we expect that it will continue in high school. We'll see what that journey looks like. But yes, deaf culture, the deaf plus, the deaf blind, the deaf, in deaf culture, being deaf is not a disability. It should not be considered a disability. It's a communication access need. And so, but because she has multiple needs, that's the factor that was difficult. And, I had learned previously that, there were other children and parents who had those similar experiences. So I knew to anticipate them, and I was ready to advocate. I see another question there.
Hi, thank you for your keynote. Thank you also for sharing Jet's story. And I know she's not here, but my question is, I'd like to know a little bit more about Jet and specifically self-advocacy behaviors. I loved the story of her giving her martial arts teacher the mic. And yeah, since she's not here to sort of share, what are her other sort of self-advocacy behaviors, and what can professionals sort of look for?
Yeah. So Jet uses a white cane to navigate her community. And so we do have to encourage her to make sure she folds it up, because she likes to just kind of leave it hanging around. But with her advocacy, a lot of it is around access. So she bridges between the hearing world and the deaf world. And so she will assimilate in a way that if she sees other people signing, she will use more sign. However, she has an intervener, and she will rely on that intervener a little more heavily for spoken English. And so, but when we're in a hearing environment, you know, she will say, I can't hear you, and she will bring out those listening devices. So that's one component. She will also say in a classroom setting if she can't see or hear something, and she will make sure that she asks for her tools. She will walk up to it. She has such confidence, actually, and it's brilliant. I was not as confident as her growing up as a child. And so to watch her just feel comfortable going up to people, but a lot of that took practice, right? And so she has new people coming up to her, and they'll be talking to her in spoken English because they don't know sign language, and so she'll make sure to tell them, you know, I can't understand you. She also uses an iPod at school, or that doesn't have extra features. It's a communication tool. She uses a note. She has been able to develop her language skills tremendously. Her written communication is a strong part of her advocacy, actually. And to watch her use that tool with others who can't understand her, because she's not always clear, to be able to whip that out in a heartbeat and say, like, I'm typing it here so you can see it. And so she loves the internet. So if she finds something, that's actually her way to, I think, build a connection. She'll start by asking, do you know Monster High? Do you know? And so are you familiar with Draculaura, like her favorite? So she'll use that as a way to bridge. Now we also have to we're working on teaching her how to evolve that beyond just her likes, because teaching her how that, you know, we learn from others. Like, what do other people like? Because her world can be really small sometimes, and we're trying to extend her so that way she understands that she might actually find something new to like from other people. But a lot of her access is thinking about her environment. We talk about her advocacy of, like, what does she want her career and education to look like? Oh, at home, she has we're an Apple family. Auntie Marlene works at Apple, and so we were able to get a lot of resources, both from personal resources, but other disability support services, a large screen. She has the largest devices that you can get from these for both the school and home setting, and we limit, you know, the traveling of things so as much as possible. Some things need to go back and forth, so that way she knows that those are her accessibility tools for learning, and virtual services. She does a lot of virtual services, and we taught her a lot about advocacy with how to navigate the virtual world too.
How has she navigated friendships and a social life? And what does her peer relationships look like, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, absolutely. And that is one of her current hardships, is the social aspect. She does not have many friends, and she has not had many friends over the course of her lifespan. And part of that, it's not that she hasn't had connections. It's just that she's been in different environments. So we had a lovely experience in California. We have this transitional kindergarten year. And she was in a general education environment. There was this lovely boy, Ben, who was so curious about Jet, and had exposure to the deaf world, had a family member who was deaf. So he became a friend to Jet. And so at that time, her communication skills were not strong, but we did have a few different play date experiences, birthday parties. But with that change of environment, she went to a different school. It was hard to keep that connection. So in her current school environment, she was in virtual services for a couple of years, and she's an only child. And we did not have a lot of activities that we were able to continue to support her with. As working parents, we had, my mother lived with us, which was fantastic. She was not necessarily always prepared to drive or take Jet out in the community herself. But as the network built and we developed a community intervener, she's been instrumental in being able to take her out and do different things. Martial arts right now has been the first aspect for community friends. Jet attends a school that's 30 minutes away. So that's the other hardship of being able to develop friends. So in her martial arts, she's doing individual sessions, but there was a very curious girl who said hello to Jet and invited her to her birthday party. This was last weekend. So Jet got to go to that. We are hoping that that is one friend she can develop in our local community, our neighborhood, and we will continue to explore that. In her deaf side, her community, I mean, she had the general education mainstream experience in 5th grade, and that was huge. She made 4 friends, and she was able to share her Apple message. So she was able to message with these girls. And over that bridge between 5th grade to 6th grade, they stayed connected. They did FaceTime sessions, which was like the best. I cannot tell you. Now, I wish to say that those friendships continued. They did not. In moving into middle school, these are hearing children. You know, they have expanded. They do other community things like sports and things like that. And Jet's just not into those things. So in her deaf program, she does have peers, and she does have the cell phone of a peer. And we have been teaching her how to communicate, how to start building that connection. Say, hey, let's go to the mall together. They have tried many times. This is a student who has a multilingual family. The Spanish is their native language. The mother speaks Spanish. And so the student is learning English at school. So I do think that the communication between the mother-daughter is also not strong. The student has to learn English. And so when she communicates with Jet via messaging, her language skills, her English language skills in written form is also not as strong. But they are able to communicate, and we've tried a few times to build that connection, but every time we try to make that get together happen at the mall, it falls apart because their family system, the parent works a lot. So actually at school this past week, her community deafblind intervener was able to see, we had the open house. And so we saw the student and her mother. And so we asked the child, like, would it be helpful if we maybe offered to pick you up rather than rely on the family? And so we are hopeful that we will be able to make that happen in this near future, because these two children, my daughter and her friend, are the same age. And we anticipate that they will be together through high school. And so we're really trying to build up that support, that connection for her, because it is the one thing that she knows is a weakness and that she really wants. And mental health is important. That connection that I've seen for individuals when they move, as a professional, when students move from middle to high school and they have, they don't have a strong identity in deafness, and that's why we have her in a deaf program. So that way she can continue and build that self-identity. And because she's a proud deafblind individual. She will say, I'm deafblind, and to other people. Now, there are some days where she'll say, I'm not deaf. I don't have hearing loss. What are you talking about? And we're like, and she goes, just kidding. It's really cute to hear her voice and how she's learned to communicate. And again, we did not know, those spoken language skills took a long time to develop. And so, so she's having to navigate friendships in the hearing world and the deaf world. And we are, in the low vision world, we're going to have her attend this School for the Blind's summer academies. So immersing herself in all these different communities is hard. It's a lot of time. And I'm the working parent. My husband now stays home and is the primary parent at home, and we have to navigate all these things together. So it takes a lot of coordination and how we support growing that social community for her. And we hope that maybe she'll continue with her education beyond into post-secondary. She's going to earn a diploma, again, which has been a long journey. Auntie Corinne brought her from 4 grade levels behind to, about a year behind. She's on grade level for a few things, but being within that year's grade level for education and curriculum has been really, really a long journey. Many hours of intervention that takes place. And so that does also limit her aspect of engaging in community, social networks. And so we're trying to marry that how do you do that together? There's only so minutes in the day. And so martial arts is Dad's passion. And Jet's name actually was based after Jet Li, the martial artist. And so in case you didn't know, and this is her name sign, Jet. So we, and it's spelled Jeette. I got to pick the spelling. So it's, we do it all together. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. There's so many things that are going to be a part of today, and enjoy the experience.
Thank you for attending the 2026 Early Connections Conference. Action. Scan the QR code in the center of the screen for more sessions.